Okay, it's on.
Come on, Ken.
Camera's on.
Yep. Everyone's up here. You're part of the team now.
Have you done work on Franklin before?
Oh, that's fine.
Where we've met people?
This is for Eric when he comes.
Huh.
And Brian,
Been
where
involved
are
with
others,
this
Brian?
software for
7 years, yeah, at least.
that was, yeah, safety,
And then,
Yes,
Tom
okay.
and Jason.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So,
networking.
so this is where we're kind of at, and there are two pieces of property that we were looking at, and one was lot 15 on Business Park Drive, which is the corner lot. The other lot was lot 6 on Business Park Drive, which is next to Sea Light, which was the old 61 Business Park Drive, and Sea Light bought it from the town of Tilton. We still own that, okay? So we had the geotech people go out and look at it. We had Gary go out and look at it to determine which was the best suited lot for the PD. And there's lots of pros and cons on each one. And the selectmen Thursday evening decided that it was really a very close decision, and they thought that we'll leave it up to the committee to decide. We have a layout of what the PD should look like. What we're hoping it to look like. Shut this off or I'll be getting phone calls all night. And it's one story, and Gary can talk a little bit more. In Justice for Time, what I did was sat with the chief and the captain, and we went over the original one that was done by Gary a little bit back, and we critiqued it a little bit, and we changed some offices around and enlarged a little piece, and what they had asked for was a 3-port Sally, a 3-bay Sally port, and there were a couple other adjustments. So this is the new adjusted version. So it's going to be our job to look at what type of building, what it's made of, what the cost is going to be, how much, all of what that's going to entail.
Those plans, Pat, are the ones that fit on lot 15.
Okay, so right here you have plans that are on lot 15. Now, we'll go over the pros and cons of each one, which is the next page, which is what Gary has, the pros and cons of each lot. And then we have the studies of the each one, where the borings were and how deep they could go and how not so deep they could go. And that's from JTC, which is Turner. And that would be this that says big draft on it.
Those borings and probes are noted on the site plans that I gave you last week. So there's basically 3 site plans, 2 for lot 15 and 1 for lot 6. Lot 6 needs a 2-story scheme, so that's a different floor plan.
Right.
Lot 6 had 4 borings done, and lot 15 had,
So this would be lot 6, right?
that is lot 6, correct.
Right. So Ken, this is lot 6, a 2-story.
And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 borings and 3 probes on lot 15.
And that's what that paper is for the borings. And we have the wetland delineation. This was the first thing that kind of held us up a bit because there are some wetlands in lot 15, and we wanted to make sure whether or not we needed to have a 100-foot buffer or a 20-foot buffer. And if we were soundly away from any of it, then on lot 6 as well. So this took a little bit of time to get to this, and then also the borings, and get the report back.
Turns out all of those setbacks are 20 feet for lot 15. That's the area you see with all the little crosses. Lot 15's site plan. Those are the wetland area setbacks. And there's also a boomerang shape in the lower right-hand corner with a hatch mark in it. That's an easement. I think it's a telecom. Could be wrong. Where is that? Here. It's an easement. You can't build in.
So that was not, the other night someone said it was sewer, so that's not.
It's not because they haven't brought it up yet.
Yeah, that's
The-
what-
The
yeah, that's
deal
what-
is that they have to bring it up, excuse me, I have to cough. They have to bring it up on that side to the lot. That's the deal with the sewer in Nickerson's Park. So, lot 6 we own. Lot 15, can we go into the detail on the cost thereabouts?
Thereabouts, I think. Yeah, and also which lot has which services. And what would be included if we bought it versus what.
Come on up, Tom.
Okay.
Everyone, this is Tom. Have a seat.
Have a seat?
Yep,
You mind if I sit here?
whatever.
Sit there.
This is gonna be a working committee, so.
Yeah. Awesome.
I apologize for being tired in car trouble.
So, lot 6 we own, so the cost of the lot is, we own,
So there's no note or anything?
no.
No.
On that?
No, we own it. We do have the capability of selling it, and there are interested parties to purchase it. Okay? That being said, we have the price from Mr. Nickerson on the corner lot.
Also, our lot, we invested in putting it, we stubbed it for water. So
Yes.
Water went in. And then there's also sewer there, and there is gas there.
Well, the other one is stubbed for water as well.
It is stubbed for water.
Yes, all of the lots are now stubbed for water. So, lot 15 is, all the way up on that side is stubbed for water.
So what was the value of 6?
It's around about 100 and, I wouldn't really, unless we went into non-public, we could talk money.
And roughly speaking, probably 15 is twice the value of 6.
But we could take a minute and just go into non-public and let it out.
I think it's gonna be difficult for us to make
Yeah, let's just go
calculated
into.
decision on which lot without having figures.
All right, now that we have a quorum, let me make a motion to go into non-public to discuss the sale and lease of property. And then we can come back out of non-public. Anybody second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Cameras on.
Okay, I'll make a motion to seal the minutes in the non-public as they pertain to the sale and lease of property until the matters are settled. Which would be the town meeting. All those in favor? Kevin? Okay, so for the purposes now of, let's just kind of put this aside because we have a quorum, right? So we have Chuck, Jason Wright, and Eric that are not here tonight, but will be with us. So we need to really pick a chair. That chair is gonna run the show and get us all on the same page. And hopefully by January we need to have a warrant article that says this is what we want for a PD, this is how much it's going to cost, and then we can put together January, February for a presentation. In March we need 2 public hearings. So the chair really kind of facilitates us in a forward movement all the time and puts it all together for us. So we need to get someone for a chair. I nominate Kevin.
What did I miss?
Nothing.
My opinion on that is, I realize the other guys are not here, but giving them an opportunity to chair.
Okay, do you want to,
Chair Pro Tem.
do you want to pro tem it tonight and then we'll,
Or if you did co-chairs.
we could do that. I mean, there's going to be somebody that's either going to take the vice chair or
Yeah,
going to work
that's
closely
fine.
to you.
In case Kevin-
Just in case Kevin can't make it.
My concern is 2 things with my personal situation is time. And maybe being too close to running the meetings politically for my current job. I'm not so sure. I know my last boss, who just recently left, didn't like the idea of that. So it just gets a little sticky, and I have to respect that. And I have to respect the time piece too, because there could be times where
Can do that. So, all right. Well, we can do it.
if you want to, I can hold it for tonight until the others are here,
And then we'll figure it out.
and we'll figure it out.
Because we have Eric, Jason, Chuck.
I don't want to slow the process down, because we don't have time for that.
No, we don't. We have to pick a chair, vice chair, and we have to pick a meeting night. How many times in the month do you want to meet? And a goal and objective is, where we have to be at the end. And looking at it, but we need to hear from Gary tonight on the pros and cons of each lot and figure out, we can relay the information back to the others. Gary's only going to be here for some specific times. One is the public hearing, right?
Well, let me make a suggestion while we have Gary here. We want him to go through what he went through with the board, so that when we have our next meeting, we need to attend that.
Right.
Is that-
For the benefit of the members that are here tonight that weren't here last week.
Right. Then we can just go forward with.
And we have all the documentation, but the reason I'm here would be to go
Pass
through
that
it and
information,
answer any
right.
questions.
Okay. So did you want to do that now with this group, or wait and,
No, I could do it tonight.
okay, and then as this group, then we can inform the other members?
Yep.
Because I know your time is,
Everybody's time.
Also, it'll be on video, so they can watch.
You're gonna have to adjust your microphone, Gary.
Yeah, just pull it forward a little bit. There you go.
How's that?
so maybe we want to go through where we're at right now, and then,
Okay. I'll save the pros and cons for after I've discussed the site plans that presumably everybody has in front of them. Sheet S101 is one of the two Lot 15 layouts. It's the most efficient, compact layout in terms of parking and site access. I did a little bit of a hybrid entrance here to address the concern of the PD. Should the public entrance and regular staff entrance be blocked for any reason? It's 2 lanes wide, but if it should be blocked for any reason, there's an extra lane that I've noted staff exit only to minimize the opportunity for someone to get held up when a staff member or a police cruiser needs to leave the site. We have from previous designs a requirement for 9 public parking spaces and 24 staff parking spaces. This design incorporates or will incorporate a carport roof for the 5 spaces that are up against the building on the staff side. And the layout that I don't have with me tonight for topography would allow us just a minimal amount of cutting in the upper left-hand corner of the site for the layout of the parking. And where the building would sit, we'd actually raise the existing grade. So we're not making the 4 to 5 foot distance down to bedrock worse for us.
We're looking at 15.
Correct. And the building and the parking is right up against the public utility easement on the left-hand side of the site. And as we talked about earlier, if we can park in it, you can expand your parking there. You could possibly put an impound lot if you wanted to, fence it in. There's also an opportunity on the bottom of the plan to expand both the building and the public parking. We're pretty much right up against that utility easement on the bottom right-hand corner, whatever it is, if it's sewer, if it's telecom, I'm not sure. We're out of the area where the setback is for wetlands. The parking is tucked right up against the wetland setback in the upper left-hand corner. So when we move into, if you were to expand into the utility easement, you'd still have to be mindful of that setback for the wetlands. The other one, S1.01A, is still Lot 15, but the basic difference here is the public entrance and the staff entrance are separate. Public entrance is off of Business Park Drive, and the staff entrance is off of Sanborn Road. This particular layout, because it has a separate entrance, has about 1,900 square feet more of pavement than the previous scenario. So the benefit of having your own entrance, you have to pay for a little bit more pavement to get that. And you also have to cross the wetlands at the ditch by Sanborn Road. So in this layout, I'm presuming you'll be able to put a culvert in that ditch and pave over it. That remains to be seen. We just need to make sure we can do that in order to get this access.
Can we, I have one question. Do you want to just keep going, or do you want me to have a list of questions after?
No, let's do the questions as I go. I think it's better that way.
Is there a way to fit the public access onto Sanborn Road on on S101?
Public, the only access that I can see that works from Sanborn Road is pretty much where I show it. So you'd have to come in and then go to the right if you wanted to put the parking where I show it. If you wanted to rearrange the building closer to Sanborn Road, you could do that. And you're saying maybe the staff parking comes off of Business Park Drive? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and then my thought is if this were to...
There's a very steep in the front here in the corner. To walk it, it's very steep right here in, right here in the
Right where the
corner.
sign is right now, currently.
It's up like that, all around this corner. And up here, it's a little bit flatter.
Plus, we're not, in the upper right-hand corner, we're not crossing any wetlands in order to get that. This entrance right here, Kevin, can happen as I've shown it, as long as we're not in that utility easement.
Right, you have a very small window.
And if you notice, there's a very narrow dashed line that goes through the site towards the building. That's a bit of a clearing right now. It's almost as if it were an old road. Not paved, certainly, it's just almost like a carriage road. I was able to walk through that opening in order to verify those probes and borings. So coming off of Sanborn Road didn't strike me as an impossibility in terms of the topo there. So either it would be a staff entrance or it could be the public entrance, but
I would look to the police chief and the captain of whether or not they wanted their staff at a separate entrance. I mean, who am I to say that? My suggestion was,
They do. That was one of the suggestions.
most of the ones that I do, most of the police stations that I design, that's the wish list. That's the preference, to separate staff from public, for a multitude of
And
reasons.
this is one of the chief's wishes that they came in on two.
so is that possible? My pen line? kinda?
Yes.
That is.
Yep. I could do another layout that shows that.
Why would you want the public to come in off of Sanborn Road?
More so the fact that it would be a separate entrance is number one. And them coming off the main road, and it offers a longer driveway for them to get in. It's more of a corridor, I guess. If you were to get it.
So lot 101A shares the staff and public on the top. You see that? The entrance?
No, 101A has two separate entrances.
No, 101.
101.
101.
101 shares a staff and a
Right.
public
The
entrance.
top one, Joyce, shares the staff, see it?
Yeah.
So then 101A has two separate entrances.
We could do a hybrid. What Kevin is suggesting is a hybrid of both, so that we have
Right.
the layout shown on S101 with the entrance being staff only, and
Right.
add the entrance that I'm showing from S101A and curve it towards the public parking lot,
Right.
is what I understand him to.
Yeah, in my view, it offers a little bit more privacy during their transports. But I would look to the chief and the captain.
Well, I would agree with that, because right now in S101A, the Sally Port and the staff entrance of the building are facing Sanborn Road. And ideally, that part of the building you'd like to be as private as possible. So I would suggest that the hybrid is probably a good idea.
And I think it gives it some prominence. I guess in my mind, I've been thinking about this for about a week, and the prominence of the building sitting on that hill, perched, and having a private entrance to the a public entrance to the front of the building. It's a little bit more prominent for the public. In the same breath, it gives the officers that privacy for a high-profile transport that they may have. The last thing they want to be doing is passing, a citizen in the same entryway with the prisoner in the back.
Yep.
But just my opinion.
Yep. That would mean, I mean, if we settle on that, we'd really have to make sure that we can put a culvert in that ditch and access Sanborn Road. So along with that site plan are the two floor plan versions that you see. First floor Scheme A, first floor Scheme B. Those are both one-story plans.
Can you turn the lights on, Pat? Okay.
The only difference between Scheme A and Scheme B, as I mentioned last week, is they swap, the evidence storage and processing swaps place with the mechanical, electrical, and communications rooms. Scheme A allows the officers to enter the evidence storage and evidence processing without going into the Sally Port, which I thought was a better solution than having to go into the Sally Port from the corridor to get into evidence.
Does that pose a problem for evidence security, chief, as far as whether they're together or separate?
For me, I'd rather have the access be
Right. Because staff from inside the building will often go into the evidence receiving and evidence storage. And to have to go into the Sally Port every time, especially if there's an officer with a prisoner in the Sally Port at the time, having a problem. So my preference would be for Scheme A. And in Scheme A, the way that it's laid out, we can have the chief's entry be separate, as you see in the upper portion of the plan. If you flip the building the way I had it in the previous site plan, with the staff entry facing Sanborn Road, you didn't get, well, actually you did. The whole floor plan was flipped over, so that's a moot point. But I think it's a good idea to have a separate entrance for the chief, just in case something's going on in the lobby. The chief can come and go from his office and administrative area without having to go through the rest of the building.
And that's normal practice.
Again, it's one of those things that if you can do it, it's a good idea. And in this particular case, it's the cost of a door. So I think it's well worth the investment.
The only thing you lose from that, we can talk about it after, but is wall space.
Correct.
Because the admin, would you be losing a lot of file?
Well, it seems the way it's laying out right now, there's a fair amount of file storage already, but you can never have enough, I suppose.
Not at the PD.
Right.
We have them all downstairs.
So, I mean, we can talk about the particulars of the floor plan later.
Yep.
I think I'll go on to the other site, Lot 6. That is site plan sheet S102A. And I had originally done a scheme that laid out the one-story building on this site plus the parking. And because of the topography on this site, it drops from Business Park Drive towards the rear of the site. It drops 10, 12, 14 feet, according to the topo lines. And I walked the site last week, and just visually, I didn't have a transit or anything like that, but just visually, I looked and I saw 10 to 12 feet of relief from Business Park Drive towards the rear of the site, where I had imagined the rear of the site to be. So it was clear to me that we weren't going to be able to put a one-story building and parking back there without bringing in an enormous amount of fill, and then you'd have these retaining walls back there. It would just be very costly. So in this particular case, I came up with a two-story scheme, so it's basically a walkout design. From the back of the building, it's 2 stories. From the Business Park Drive side, it's only a one-story building. More compact shape, less to heat and cool over time, especially in this design where we are pushed into the hill. The bottom floor of this building, half the perimeter of it is tucked into the earth. So from a heating and cooling standpoint, I think you'll come out ahead in energy costs with a 2-story scheme. It'll be slightly more expensive to build it initially because we have more real estate in the building with stairs and elevators and elevator machine rooms and that sort of thing. Plus, with a 2-story scheme, in order to make it efficient, the ground floor is typically the same footprint as the upper floor, even though the ground floor doesn't necessarily need all that extra square footage. So in this particular scheme, which you'll see in a minute, we actually have a bonus storage area on the lower level of almost 900 square feet. So in this particular case, we have 2 entrances, one for the public and one for staff. They're fairly close together, maybe 10 feet apart at most, and a fairly lengthy driveway. But in this particular scheme, your staff entrance and Sally Port are very private. It'd be very difficult for the public to get back there and see any of the goings-on back there.
And this would require an elevator.
Correct. Well, and we talked about the possibility of maybe it's a lift, like you have here, but my feeling is I'd have to verify the travel distance of those lifts to make sure that our floor-to-floor height is acceptable to the manufacturers who make those lifts. If not, we'd have to go with a regular elevator. Are there any questions on the site layout before I go to the floor plans? No? Okay. So there's one sheet called lower floor and upper floor scheme C. That's the two-story scheme we were just talking about. On the right-hand side is the upper floor. On the left-hand side of that plan is the public entrance into the lobby. There's a stair just a little bit above that lobby, and there's a stair out the back towards the back of the building where the elevator is located. And that stair would be how the staff members came and went if they decided to come in an area other than the sally port. They could come into that stair and they could proceed on that same floor through a door that goes past the elevator if they want to go to the locker rooms or the fitness room or evidence storage or anything like that. Or they could go up the stairs and then they're on the first floor where there's training and EOC, dispatch, and all of those other programmatic areas on the first floor. There's a slight increase in the the overall floor area for this building. It's roughly 2,000 square feet more than the single-story building. But as I mentioned, if you look on the lower level, upper portion of the plan beyond the last sally port bay, you'll see a generous sized storage area. That's approximately 900 square feet. And you can never have enough of that. In both layouts, I didn't mention this when we were looking at the other floor plan, but I've located the training and classroom and EOC area so that when the public comes, if there's a meeting, let's say there's a state police are coming for a training session or something like that, they don't have to go very far into the PD to access the training room. And it's cordoned off. There are doors for security purposes, so you can come from the lobby, go through the door, and you're immediately in a corridor that will give you access to the training room, as well as the bathrooms associated with the training room. Off of the lobby in both floor plans, you have records and reception on one side with a transaction window, and dispatch on the other side with a transaction window. There's a public toilet in both lobbies, both floor plans. Those are the essentials, and there's also an interview room right off the lobby. So if someone comes in, domestic issue, they want to be brought in to file a complaint, they can come into that interview room, their door can be closed, and from the lobby side they can be secured. You have staff entrance coming from the other side of that interview room, so staff does not have to go into the lobby to interview that person. And if that person felt threatened and didn't want to leave through the public lobby, that they could go out the staff door and go out through a separate exit. Both floor plans have a 3-bay sally port. That was a request. I think pretty much all the other amenities are in both plans.
Except the carport.
Right. In this particular scheme, I mean, we could do a carport, but it would be difficult to make it contiguous to the building. It would more likely be a standalone structure than the other single-story scheme, which it's easy to just build up against the building.
Gary, can I ask a stupid question?
No such thing, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm looking at S102, and I'm looking at the upper floors, and I see the public entrance. So that means that this upper floor is right here.
No, that's the one level layout that you're looking at in your left hand.
You're talking about S101, Joyce?
S102.
That site plan I didn't bring. because that's the one-story scheme I told you wouldn't make economic sense, because we'd have to raise the building and the fill and all that. So I brought it last week just to show you that I went down that road and
we
decided
can
it
just
wasn't
X it.
viable. S102 should just be nixed. It's S102A that's really the only viable solution
Okay.
for that
I
site.
was gonna say, because
So S 1.02 is out.
Correct.
Thank you.
all right, well, that makes so much more sense, because there's the public entrance. This is the first floor, and there's the lower floor.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, Eric.
Hi.
It was right there. It was green. It's red. There. Thank you, because I thought it was completely.
Yeah, I was vacillating whether I should even bring it last week, but I wanted to at least show you, rather than just tell you it didn't work, I wanted to show you that it didn't work.
Okay. So we're looking at S102A.
Correct,
Is what matches this sketch.
right.
So the public comes in the upper floor,
Yes,
and the Sally Port and all of the mechanicals are on the lower floor? Is that?
on this two-story scheme, that's correct.
Oh, yeah, partially underground?
Fully underground from the street side,
Okay.
partially open on the downhill side. The grade, as the grade goes around the building, it will drop.
Roughs down so that you can get the garage doors to work.
Right.
Okay.
The three garage doors and the sidewalk that will go into that stairwell, that'll all be flat in the back. And then, once you get beyond the Sallyport door on the right-hand side and the stair on the left-hand side, grade will start, and the foundation wall will step up and grade
Yeah,
will step
yeah.
up. Yep. So the portion of the building that's get built into the earth, it's just going to be concrete. We don't have to worry about siding it.
No, is there any lockups in these at all?
We do have two cells, yes.
Okay.
Plus, we have a cage in there where you could put 4 or 5 well-behaved prisoners. 1 or 2 if they're not.
Yeah, so you're looking at, there's the cells right here, Tom. This is the prisoner processing.
Oh.
And then up in the upper left is the
I can't read
cage.
those, I can't read those 4-letter words, you know. Thank you very much.
And what I would propose to do, because I had to, it was a sort of a last-minute decision last week to go with this two-story scheme when I realized the one-story scheme wouldn't work. So down in that cell block area, what I will endeavor to do as we develop the floor plan, if this two-story scheme is the way we go, I will try to lay it out the same way I laid it out in the one-story scheme, where you have both an interview room and a bail room, so that if you have a prisoner who is going to make bail, you can also use that interview room for other reasons, like interviewing a prisoner, but the prisoner I see going in on one side of that, the bail officer can come in through the staff entry, go into that room, so the bail officer and the prisoner are separate, but there's a transaction window so they can talk and conduct business, but the bail officer is not exposed to the prisoner. And should the prisoner make bail, the prisoner can leave via that staff entrance, or can be escorted out the front lobby. Probably the latter. I don't know that you'd want to let the prisoner go out by where the staff vehicles are.
Gary, is there a national standard that offers guidance on the design of police facilities?
There really isn't. There's recommendations. It's been very difficult to find information that's mandated, aside from things like separating juveniles from adults.
Okay.
That's easy enough to understand. You know, most states have those RSAs. But in terms of if you're looking for what's the size of a particular room, there's no cut and dry standard to go by. Everybody's different in their individual needs. Some folks want 3 Sallyport bays. Others will use one of those bays for putting an impound vehicle in out of the weather. For when I did Somersworth, they had a 2-bay Sallyport. The second bay was actually used for storing bicycles. They had a real problem in Somersworth where they would collect all year long 40 or 50 bicycles, and at the end of the year they'd have an auction. They had no place to put them, So we actually gave them a second Sallyport bay so they could store these bicycles. So it's things like that.
You're not getting a fourth.
Come on.
Training room sizes, that varies depending on the town's needs. In this case, you have 50.
We were very specific on 50 because we're eligible for grants and things on the 50 where it would be leads.
And as a result of that, I had to provide a second way out of that room. You'll notice in both floor plans, the training room has 2 doors out. Once I hit that magic number 50, the code tells me I need 2 ways out of that room.
If you talk to other PDs that have built, they really regret not having a training room facility that will accommodate them, those classes.
And these are lecture style. These tables are 15 to 18 inches deep, just enough for a laptop or a notebook.
What is watch command?
I'll let the chief and the captain tell you what goes on there.
So the watch commander would be the on-duty supervisor. So they would kind of be stationed up by dispatch, or if they had to hold a juvenile, they can't be like in a secured area unless it's for like a violent crime, and they can only be for a certain amount of time. They have to be watched the whole time. And since it's toward the front of the lobby, this is where it's easier to release them and keep them separated from the actual prisoner area, which is farther back in the building, because they have to be sight and sound separated from adult offenders. So.
What is the preferred design of police operations and in administration, for that matter? I mean, we have 2 very different designs.
Which do we prefer for the floor plan?
What makes more sense for your operation?
For our operation, I think the one level, at a quick glance, there's some concerns I have over the 2-story where the booking area is in the lower level, and then you have to escort them upstairs to exit the building once they're bailed, and that type of stuff. I'd have to look. Plus, along with the carport, we have a fleet of vehicles, and they constantly have to be moved for snow removal and such. If they're out of the weather, then we don't have to have them moved all the time. Plus, if we have more than 2 officers on, they don't have to clear the car off to go to a call. So
They're ready.
we're ready.
What's the air handling system? Is it the same for all designs?
Yeah, we haven't really even gotten to that point.
Okay.
But we can make anything work.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just assuming full HVAC.
Yeah, I think you're going to want air conditioning in this facility. You've got documents, you've got evidence, you've got things that need, and in the evidence area, we need specific ventilation requirements for the drug storage and that sort of thing.
That's very specific. We just spent mutual
Weapons
bucks to
cleaning.
upgrade ours, and it's
Special ventilation requirements.
Band-Aid.
Is the duty of this committee to also go through mechanical, or are we talking about just the shell only, shell and property?
You could probably do that down the road. I think probably what we really need to get our arms around is what site we want to go with, because
That would be first.
we've done this exploratory work for 2 separate sites. The next logical step is to narrow it down and then pursue one floor plan versus the other.
But will we get into it when you cost something out? You're gonna be looking at a specific mechanical room, HVAC unit. You're gonna be looking at specific windows, what kind of windows, siding versus, wood, brick, whatever.
We do have to have that conversation, as Kevin mentioned last week, on how long you want this building to last. That will tell us what degree of construction, commercial grade construction, we want to put into this building, because that'll have an effect on the price.
And then once we figure, what do you think is the best avenue to go to as far as a committee and in the best interest of the taxpayers, then Gary will cost it all out. That's at that point where all the nuts and bolts are all added up, and this is how much it's going to cost you. This is how much the land's going to cost you. This is how much we can deduct from the sale of, if it's lot 15, from the sale of lot 6 and from the sale of the OPD, versus all of that information and put in. But the nuts and bolts will be the end, which Gary is hired to do that.
For the purposes of restating what I had said last week at the Selectmen's meeting, for those who were not there, one of my biggest questions in this project is, how long do we want this building to last? Because I think that helps in our direction. Is this committee particular to a lightweight constructed building that could last a 30-year mark? And correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, on my years. Or are we willing to say that we want the building to last for 50 years and we go to brick and mortar? I think that's we have to think about that, especially when it's time to present to the public. The price tag is obviously going to be much higher for a brick and mortar building, but in my opinion, the current police station that we're in was a temporary building, and really was never designed to be a police station. It was a quick fix that, in my mind, they outgrew that 10 plus years ago. So I would rather protect our investment, plan for the future, and go with a higher price tag for something that's going to last longer. But
Mr. Chair, that affect my heat? So that building that affect my heat versus,
We would insulate the envelope in a similar way. It would just have a masonry backup. But the R value of the wall, we would try to make it the same in both cases. The whole building wouldn't necessarily be CMU. I would suggest maybe the outside walls get to be CMU, and then all of the walls that anywhere near the prisoner area in Sallyport, anywhere where you expect the abuse. Elsewhere, we could use metal studs and abuse-resistant sheetrock. And in other portions of the PD, it's much like an office building. You can trust the staff not to be abusive to things. Where the public and where the prisoners are, it's a little bit different story. I think we have to be a little bit more careful with what we put there.
I just think of roof structure and exterior walls. If we're talking about a block building in a 50-year time period, the building that I currently work in is almost 50 years old, and we've painted it 4 times, and the block is just at the 50-year mark starting to show deterioration. So, and that's why I bring this up, because I think it makes a huge difference. If we plan to direct vinyl siding, well, that's the result that my kids will face in 20 years. We're going to be residing the building. It's going to be faded. We'll still have good curb appeal for a police facility.
I've been in the construction business since I was 15 years old. And this is a Class 1 construction, high-rise. And mostly in Massachusetts. And there is an R value that's mandated by the county or the state or the town. Also, there are certain specific building materials that you can't use. So, I mean, you can't use 2x4 trusses on a public building. It's not good. So I've done a lot of metal studs and drywall in my day. Double 5/8, with an hour-and-a-half fire barrier. Hard work. But I just want to add that, this is there are mandates for fire codes, and we have to apply by them. And that all, when you're doing, say, drywall, 5/8 fire code, and you do double layers, you're actually increasing the rigidity of the building. But the other thing too is that a lot of this coming down now with the environment being the way it is, a lot of these building codes are going to be mandated that they withstand certain winds. And if we don't want to be replacing a roof in 15 years because we have another hurricane like those poor people have down there, oh my gosh. Hurricanes, tornadoes, flying objects is the biggest thing that kill people. It's not exactly the wind itself, it's the objects.
Right.
But I don't think you've lived until you've been on the 52nd floor of the Prudential building with the building swaying 3 inches each side of center on a normal day, And I was 18 years old at the time, and I was on a 24-foot extension ladder.
For a special effect.
Yeah, well, I'm still here. So I think, just to put a period on, I think that building for the future is important, and it may be a tough sell with the citizens, but in the long run, we're actually saving them money. We have to convince them of that, but because I know everybody wants to save a penny here and a nickel there and a dollar there, but we don't want to go in this with trepidations. We're going to put up a shell and then have something happen that we can't fix.
Right.
Okay? Thank you.
One of the examples that I used last week, and it's funny because I was looking in the case tonight when we were waiting to start the meeting, and the example I use is this particular building that we're in tonight is 1868. So in 1868, this building was built. And if we went out and stood on the curb right now, other than pressure washing the outside of the building, the durability, the longevity of the building speaks for itself.
Oh, absolutely.
So to look at that picture over there where they're setting the cornerstone in 1868 and we're still in this building, if we build a lightweight constructed building, our kids and 4 generations down the road certainly won't be inside that building for a training meeting or whatever. So when we go to sell this to the public, to me this is the example that we use. It's we don't want to build a town hall every 20 years.
No.
And I believe the brick and mortar are more ballistic resistant, and in the current social climate where we got things like in Vegas and other shootings around the nation, we need to have something that's going to be safe for the public and the officers when we're doing our business. So
I agree.
So when we get to that decision point, I think those are the things that we'll need to list down to make sure that as we go to prepare a presentation to the public, those are the things that we're going to want, on the right tab. And if you have any other suggestions from other police facilities that you've done, certainly I'm not suggesting that we build it out of granite, but if you have other...
No, I'll help you along. And again, it's depending on the size of the facility and whether you're building in a town or a city. For instance, when we did Summersworth, the police chief there was adamant that every part of the building that the public saw was going to be brick veneer. So we wrapped, if you were to use this scheme A as an example, and the public street was here and here, we had brick going all the way like that, and only these 2 walls had the hardy plank siding, which is a cementitious siding, which has a 15-year warranty if you get it factory primed and painted. So that's what we ended up doing. And he also had a carport roof in the back, and that's where we put our air handler on. You know, we just
On that roof.
yeah. So
What's the size of the department in Somersville?
Oh, it's big.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big town, but
Yeah, I'm not sure how many. It was probably the biggest facility that I've done. It was 13,500 or 14,000 square feet, somewhere around
8,000?
something in that range.
They have patrol officers.
What's the cost difference between a lightweight constructed building, vinyl siding, compared to, per square foot, compared to brick and mortar?
Ooh, I can't even guess. Yeah. And
Can't even get.
I can't even guess. In this particular case, we're going to have very specific construction needs for, as the captain just mentioned, usually around the lobby, I will have bullet-resistant sheathing behind the sheetrock. Those transaction windows into the records and reception and into dispatch will be bullet-resistant. In this particular case, because 911 calls are coming into dispatch, all the walls separating that dispatch from the building have to be 2-hour fire rated. And so that dispatch window will have a, well, it's bulletproof, but it's going to have a coiling door above it that will shut in the event of a fire. Because that bullet-resistant transaction window is not 2-hour rated. So you need something to come down and create that 2-hour rating if and when the building has a fire. So it's things like that. These cell areas will have the detention grade stainless steel combination toilet sink fixtures in them. I mean, those are pretty expensive. It's not going to be a porcelain bowl that can break and...
We're gonna take the one we have. with us.
They're very pricey.
Nobody else could use it but us.
You know, and from a plumbing standpoint, when you start to get into the nitty-gritty details, we have remote flushing for those. Just in case they have contraband on them, they try to flush it down the toilet, they can't do that. The best they can do is throw it in the toilet. The officer has control of whether it gets flushed or not. So it's those kinds of things that add incremental costs to the project. The doors in those cell areas are not going to be your average doors. They're going to be, 14-gauge doors, 16-gauge frames, heavy-duty hardware. The last thing you need is a prisoner wailing on the hardware with his foot because he's unhappy, and then the door breaks, the lock breaks. So that portion of the facility is going to be upgraded to withstand the abuse that we anticipate it will take. And as we talked about in evidence storage, we've got specific requirements for ventilation. In the processing lab, where they're going to do, fingerprint analysis. The drug storage is going to have specific ventilation requirements. Those sorts of things. And there'll be soft costs. In addition to the hard costs to build this building, you'll have soft costs for furniture, for IT equipment, projection screens and projectors and things like that. New phone system, those are the things that are outside of the construction costs. We call them soft costs. Together, the soft and hard costs make up the total project cost, which is the number that the voters will see. You'll likely need to do some surveying, depending on which site we choose. You'll need to get a surveyor out there to confirm the information that we've been showing here that I have from the PDFs that the town has provided, but goodness knows when the last time those were actually surveyed. So we're going to want to make sure, if we choose 15, we're going to want something current that makes sure that we're doing it right. So those... So it would be my recommendation that we make sure we do those. So those will be part of the soft costs as well.
So we need to go over the pros and cons before you exit. Because
Okay.
the committee really needs to hear those to make somewhat of a valuable decision.
There it is. That's Summersworth. It looks like it's 100% brick, but if you drive around back,
Yeah.
it's not. And actually,
Yeah,
now
would you guys
that-
pay for that rainbow?
that was pretty cool. I actually didn't take that photo with the rainbow. Somebody in the town did.
Wow,
Is that the Summersworth one?
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
I had seen it.
And that's brick?
It's brick most of the way around as I described it. If you go around back, and as I'm remembering it, we had a carport back there, but they ended up not building it because it was a little bit too expensive. The one in Milford that I did has a carport, a flat roof carport that we put the air handling unit on. We tried to do the same thing at Summersworth, and we were not successful. If you looked up Milford, you'll see a similar. It's brick veneer on the front of that too, and we ended up using a lot of granite for headers and sills only because there was a school on that site. The school had a fire. They demolished it, but they wanted to save all the granite that was on the windows for that particular building, so we used all that granite salvaged, plus there was a granite entryway that we salvaged, and it became the granite entryway into the police station.
Very good.
Okay, lot 6, the pros that I had listed on this document from last week: no site acquisition cost. You already own the site. No ledge was found during the preliminary soils investigation, so digging should not be much of a problem, which is good because you would need to have a 2-story building to make this site work. I did, off the cuff, feel that you would probably need to cart some soil off this site if you chose to use it. So if the town had the ability to do that with their public works trucks and they needed that fill somewhere else in town, that wouldn't be a cost to the town presumably, but if you didn't have need of the fill and you had no way to move it, then there would be a cost factored into moving that soil off-site. The staff and Sallyport entries are well hidden from public view. That's a plus. But as we talked earlier, we can make that work for us on the other side as well by adjusting the site layout. A more compact building shape translates into less heating and cooling costs over time, as I mentioned. And you get more basement storage than in the 1-story scheme because you're making the lower level the same footprint as the upper level. The cons: it's a less desirable location as far as visibility to the public is concerned. They have to drive further up Business Park Drive to find you. It's a smaller site, so there's less flexibility for the building and the parking lot layouts now and in the future. Due to sloping grade, building needs to be 2 stories, so it leading to a larger overall floor area. As I mentioned, it's about 2,000 square feet more than the other scheme. It includes stairs and an elevator. Likely need to remove the soil from the site, some soil from the site, due to the parking and building layouts and grading. And the carport would be more costly as a standalone structure than it would be against the building, which is the way the other scheme is designed. Lot 15, pros are it's a larger site, so you have more flexibility for building and parking, now and in the future. The site location is visually prominent at the intersection of 2 major roads, so it's easier for the public to find. Building can be designed as a single story, so it has a smaller floor area footprint, less initial cost to build. The option is available for a completely separate staff Sallyport entrance than the public entry, which is not available to you on the Lot 6. The cons are site acquisition costs, as we spoke of before. It will cost you to purchase the site. Ledge was found 4 to 5 feet below grade during preliminary soils investigation, but I noted that it's less of a concern given that we have adequate frost coverage right now, and as I mentioned, where we plan to put the building, we're actually going to raise the grade a little bit from what's there now. So we would have 5 to 6 feet of coverage anyway. So I'm not too concerned with that portion of the cons. It would likely cost more to heat and cool because it has increased surface area. The single-story building exposes more roof and wall to the cold and the hot. And it contains some wetlands. But the site is big enough that we've worked out this layout plus all the future expansion we think you'll need without impacting the wetlands. So it's not as much of a concern, but it is a con compared to Lot 6. Both sites seem to have the same utilities available to them, so that is neither a plus or a minus. With Lot 6, there was a gentleman here last week who correctly pointed out we're going to want to know how much of that lot we are covering with impervious material because it's a smaller site, and we have roughly, a certain percentage of parking and building that we need to put on that site. So from a standpoint of impervious coverage, you're probably better off on Lot 15 than you are on Lot 6. So that's sort of the summary in a nutshell.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, the next time we meet, we should have, it probably behoove everyone to just go up and take a look at the two properties and size it up yourself, because we're going to need to make a decision fairly quickly on what we think is the best lot and why, because we've got to get Gary moving in the right direction and ourselves, to which...
If I remember correctly from last week's meeting, the charge that we have from the selectmen are to, first order of business is to choose a lot.
Yep. We're missing 2 members of our committee. And this person would like to be an alternate, so...
Or Jason
Tom
and
can
Chuck.
sit down.
Sure.
Jason and Chuck Drew, correct?
Jason.
Jason Wright, Chuck Drew.
Yes. Yep. So, depending on when we meet again.
Who has their forms?
I do.
And the selectmen can sign them Thursday, tomorrow night,
Yep.
and then
We can
come in and be sworn,
I can swear them in at the meeting.
at the next meeting. One of the things why it's good to be officially appointed is that the protection of the town, our insurance covers you for any actions that you take, decisions you make, and the participation. Also, we do have some ethics policies that we're supposed to give out. I did it a couple of years ago, I said in the commentary, so I'll send you a copy of those as well. And then also had a very question on the non-public. That once minutes are sealed in a non-public session, then we cannot discuss what was discussed with anybody until such time as the minutes are passed. What we want to do, for that.
I think that's really important, that because many committees in the past where we've sat in, I don't know how many I've sat in, probably 4 maybe, in the past, some information has gotten out and for whatever reason, just one little kind of piece of information, and it gets turned a different way, and it takes months, and we don't have months, to turn that back around to where it began. And it's very difficult to do that. Most of what we have here is in public anyway, and all the meetings are all public. Just need to talk about the money portion.
To add on to that, Pat, I think that there's been so much work that's gone into this police station committee. For everyone who's worked on this previously, I think one of the most important things that can follow us through this entire process, all the way to delivery at the town meeting, is the integrity of the committee, of hopefully keeping our discussions at the committee level, because certainly I think we've all been involved in discussions outside, and there's no malintent, and when that will fester and grow outside this meeting room, and then when we get to the town meeting to present, there's already some presumptive decision-making on the part of the taxpayers. So I think that's going to be really, really important for us. It'll make for a clean presentation.
So did you bring your completed forms?
Sure.
Extras.
No, I brought it.
And one other thing now, so thinking ahead, as we have our, once decisions are made and we have our facts and figures and we're doing public hearings, now exactly what is it we're gonna be asking the town meeting for?
Build a police station.
Right, but in what phase to go, what is the next?
I have an email understanding with you that I should dig up, because if I recall right, we were looking to get the funding to finish the design of the facility for 2018, and then in 2019 go for the funding to actually construct it. That's in big picture terms. That's what my
Right.
memory, if my memory
We were
serves
to
me.
go to town meeting with, because I presented it, we had a plan, we have 2 pieces of property, we were going to choose one and say, this is how much it's going to cost to build the police station. Can we go forward and next year, bring it to you, this is how much it's going to cost. And all the nuts, everything is all done.
So the only dollar amount we're gonna be asking for at the 2018 meeting is to take it to the full design. And with that.
And presumably the purchase price of the land? And presumably the purchase price of the land, because you would, if you're going to do lot 15.
Right.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to send me down the road of finishing the documents on a one-story scheme and then not be able to purchase lot 15. That'd be a waste of your money. So the 2 of them are tied together.
Do you have a preference one piece of property or the other?
My preference is lot 15. If the cost weren't the issue, lot 15 in my mind is just, it's more flexible, it's larger, it allows you to build a one-story facility if you can get away from 2 stories. It's just functionally, you don't have to traverse stairs or elevator issues. I just like it.
In your design, Gary, of a one-story building, will that allow for future expansion for a second floor?
We have a location that we could put for the elevator, but an elevator requires a pit. So as long as we don't hit ledge, which we have found there. But again, if I'm putting the building on 1 or 2 feet of fill on top of a 4-foot boring, theoretically we wouldn't run into problems with the elevator pit, but that it would be a concern. But then you'd have to design the building to have the roof taken off in the future, which would be hugely disruptive to the police station's operation. So it's not as easy as it sounds. If you were to try and put a second story on a building that's operating, that would be problematic, I think.
So I think that the reason I ask that is twofold, because the question will be asked to us during presentation of, is this room for future expansion? If we choose to say it is not our intent or the designer's intent to design this building for a second floor because it means so much more than just simply taking the roof off.
Yeah, I think if you were looking to add a significant amount of square footage to the building, then you'd probably be better off, even on lot 15, building the 2-story scheme and then adding on laterally. Because you can stay operating in your building while you're building alongside of it. You can't be in that building if people are working above you.
Okay.
If they drop something from a crane,
Yeah, it makes sense.
no, you can't do that.
We can expand off of it.
Yes, even as a 1-story scheme, there's room to expand
And lot 15
laterally.
does allow for
In
that.
lot 15,
Yes.
right, in lot 6 you wouldn't be able to. Right,
Well, continuity of operations would be
right.
the most considerable point.
Right. It would be very difficult. I just can't even imagine operating out of a building that's being expanded upward.
But again, lot 15 gives us that flexibility.
You could do a 2-story scheme and expand laterally, or you can do a 1-story scheme and expand laterally. Yeah.
I think the other thing that would help the new committee members, if they haven't been in a police station or current police station, you should go down and see how that is set up operationally.
That can, either the captain or the chief will give you a tour.
Highly recommend.
So stop in, give him a call ahead of time. If he's in town, if
Yeah.
he's in town. Hopefully you're gonna go in the main door and not in the back door yourself.
With your own
Seriously,
personal
I wanna
escort.
Go in look at the work that we have done in the past 4 or 5 years, just to band-aid it together to make it a feasible police station.
I mean, it looks nice, but it's just, it's operationally, it's, I don't wanna say more than that.
Liability.
I don't wanna say more.
What year was the current police station built?
1996, 1996
25 years ago.
or 76, something like that.
It was 97,
Yeah.
it was open.
Opened, okay.
If you have time, I gave you all the links to go to on the website. Every study, everything that's been done going back, I have an old police operations study from 2006. Needs assessment from 2006. So that's how long we've been working on this.
So point of clarification, is this committee, will we be presenting soup to nuts, even the history of the previous projects?
I wouldn't go into the history personally. I would, everyone in town knows the history. It failed. It came, they failed. You know, no, residents I'm talking about, not committee members.
No, but not new residents will not know.
I think he's right, there's a lengthy history behind this. Now, if you want to
Probably
really,
give the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you could shorten it a little bit, sure.
well, when you just said it failed, that's history. We're here today to bring to you a new police facility.
Right?
You know, I think there could be
It's
two different
time.
tactics of
Yeah.
how we present.
It's time.
We could certainly say that there's volumes and volumes and volumes of history and work, studies that went into this. We value all of that. However, this committee is starting clean. There's no repeat committee members.
I think one of the major stumbling blocks every time is somebody wants to know if a study was done. So I think
no,
we
it's
can
a-
say that there's been multiple studies done. And,
Multiple designs.
right.
So we can have that information available, so people know that.
So they don't ask
Well, the
for
answer to
another.
that then is yes, there has been a study that's been completed to nausea.
Well, and there's been approaches from a life safety complex standpoint where it was police and fire, and then it was just police. So it's gone through several iterations.
And what, 3 committees have looked at every possible available site in town? And just, my only reason I'm adamant about this is because we've been working on this for so long, and that our police are very important to us. I'm concerned about their safety, because if they're not safe, then makes it harder for them to keep us safe. And our world has changed a lot since 25 years ago. And we have to be better prepared.
And when I started with you folks, we actually started with a feasibility study that involved 7 different sites,
Yes,
if you recall,
that's right.
to whittle it
Yep.
down
To whittle it down to 2,
Business Park Drive, and then
Right.
over by J. Jill.
and it was visibility, visibility, visibility.
The mayor parcel was the last one that we came to town meeting in 2011.
And just so the committee knows, because what I think from town meeting last year and this year, we did have another property on our looking glass here, and that was the school property that was also next door to where the fire was offered to go. The Board of Selectmen felt that was not feasible, even to bring it out there to the public, because just to say we would like to go there would have been a road, a demo, and work done on the property, whatever you call that, the
Site work?
site work, upwards of $1 million in mower, just in a light to get in and out, before you even built the building. So we said, thank you very much for offering it to us, but we appreciate it, but we're going to decline it this time. And that's, so if you do hear out there say, well, what happened to the Tilton School one, and that's where it was, the Tilton School, that's what happened to it. We couldn't if it were a joint effort, we would have shared some of the cost of the road and some of the cost of the light and some of the demo work and something like that. It would probably been a little bit expensive as well, but it could have worked.
With the comments that you just made, Pat and Joyce, I think that it would be very important to recognize all of the work that was done previous, because it's helping us. And I didn't think of it this way until both of you spoke, that all of the previous work is going to help us make that decision. Whether we're narrowed down to 2 lots, where previously you said there was 7 or 8.
We started with 7.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that work was done. It's on paper. There's been feasibility studies that have been done, and it's really narrowed us to where we are today. So that needs to be recognized, that all that hard work is not going to be gone by the wayside, and that it is considered.
And additionally, this time now, the town's debt service is at its lowest. Our debt burden, we only have 1 sewer loan. Okay? And also, the interest rates are so good right now.
So financially, we're in a better spot than we've ever been.
We're in the best financial spot we've ever been.
Just a thing, just to build on what you're saying. The 7 original lots, have any of them been developed, so they're actually no longer available anyway?
Yes.
Some of them were already developed, and
Yep.
we would have had to purchase them in order for. See, back when we did that, it was a life safety complex, so its location was even more important from a response time for the
Right.
fire department. PDs operate a little differently because the cruisers are out and about all the time, so it's not like they sit and wait for a call like firefighters. All of those apparatus sit at the station when they get a call. Its location is really important to go to the fire or the EMS call or whatever the case may be.
I think that's a big decision. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no.
That's a big decision point that we've pondered for years and years and years. Should we do a life safety building? I said to the chief last week, in my mind, it's been made very clear to us that that is not the route that we're going.
Would it be advantage to take slides of the department we have and show the problems or should have it? That's a cluster.
Of the existing, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it's something to get closer to that.
We could do that.
I think you presented 3 or 4 years ago of exactly that.
And I think there's a link to that still on
And
the
also
town
the
website.
difficulty getting in and out onto Route 3 and 11,
Oh,
and
the
that there's no
parking
room
alone.
to park.
Yeah, that's a really good point, to bring that back to the surface.
Are you gonna do a presentation before town meeting, like the fire district did, before their district, or are you just gonna present everything at town meeting
No, that's
Big-
a public hearing.
Well, public hearing has been 2 public hearings.
before we go to town meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That was part of
And
the
the more
motion.
opportunity we give the public to see
Right,
what it is
exactly.
we're doing and why.
So we really have to have our work done
Right.
weeks before.
Yep.
Right, because he's
We
gonna
have to have our work done
get
in
cost
February
estimate.
Yeah, my cost estimator will need probably 3 weeks, just 2 weeks just to even get on his
We have to
schedule.
have it done in January.
Well, before that, if you need to
Well, our
let,
decision needs to be made before the end of October.
So,
when do you need the dollar amount for your warrant article?
February 1st.
Well, for the public hearings, the first one, we usually have the last week of January, and the last one, in case there's any changes in warrant articles, is the first week of February.
So I really need to wrap up before Christmas. Get on the estimator's schedule.
So it kind of, we have a budget committee coming in very soon, and so we'll probably need to wrap this up and pick another meeting time on what's best for everyone.
Yes. When do you want to meet?
Do we want to meet weekly until we're comfortable?
I would think that'd be advantageous as far as
Until you make a
timeline.
decision on the site.
That was tomorrow.
I'm kind of locked out of Wednesdays and Thursdays for now.
I think once.
Unless we do the 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, the 5 to 7, which would be fine, because 7 is the budget. Which would be a problem, but Thursdays is selectmen's. If John's here.
Wednesday, October 11th. 5 o'clock.
Five PM here,
From 6 to 7.
upstairs.
I'm tied up, but you probably wouldn't need me for that meeting, or do you think you could?
I'll probably just let you know what we've decided and then go from there.
Yeah.
And if there's any
Yeah,
questions
we're trying to
developed from that meeting, Joyce
October
can-
11th, Joyce, 5 PM. Does that work for everyone?
October 11th is the Taste of the Trails.
Just to go.
Who does
That's
that,
fine.
who does that affect?
Joyce,
No, just for me. It's just a minutes for me.
Alright.
Chuck can't do that, right?
Wednesday night is Chuck's worst night, and we don't know what, and Jason is, I know, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
What night is the sewer night on? It's the third.
You
Third
bring
night.
your little, you know, I just don't know what month this is. This is like, the 11th, Tuesday the 10th is the fire commissioners and the planning board.
So the 2nd and 4th is planning, so it would be
Sewer's
The third.
17th.
the third the third Tuesday is when Jason's not gonna be available. What time is the sewer?
7th.
So if it's at 5, we could, depending
The
on,
age of 6.
Busy
Maybe.
at 6.
Yeah.
on the 3rd.
On third Tuesday.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think don't you have something coming up on this, you're not on this,
Yeah.
you are on the ZBA?
What about Mondays?
Or PB? You're on
Does
planning.
Mondays work for anyone?
Yes, both.
Some Mondays do, that's my typical city council meeting night.
I'll go to the baby.
Are daytime meetings out of the question?
Yep. Well, for me in the afternoon, it's not. Like from 10 to,
Does it depend? Anyone?
I-
Well,
Does it think?
I'm changing jobs, so I don't know what's going to
10 to
be. Next week it might be.
1, I'm free every day.
Well, I say go with the 11th, and Chuck and I will just have to, I can watch the video and do minutes from the video.
But then we don't get to vote chair or whatever. We really wanted to get a sense of,
So, when we get this alternate person.
Well, Wednesday
Yeah.
4, if we just meet to do that, we could get organized.
see if he can come at like 5.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, 'cause the other meeting is for 6.
So maybe he can come at 5 and just, you know. So it's just one person that we know that can't make it on Wednesday on the 5th, on the 11th, I mean, at 5.
Just want to borrow your car with the lights on the day that's.
Okay, so it looks like Wednesday, the 11th at 5. And that's,
Do we also want to plan on going to both sites that night?
yeah, not in the dark.
You won't see much past 6:15.
Well, not unless we meet there. Okay.
Want to meet at the PB at 6?
No, at the
Oh,
sites.
I meet right
At
at, can we meet right at Business Park Drive?
Sure.
Okay.
And adjourn the meeting, commence the meeting there, recess, and then come back?
If you're gonna trudge through lot 6, you're gonna want some boots. Because there wasn't a lot cut down for them to access to do their borings.
Yeah.
I was surprised. There's a lot of bushwhacking involved. It's hard to get a sense
So you
of
can't
lot
get
6.
through at 5,
Well, it's,
like a 5 PM meeting?
All I'm saying is that if you're gonna, lot 15 is easier to see. There's more open area, number one, that faces Business Park Drive, and there is that clearing of a road that I mentioned that looks like a cow path. So you could actually go into the center of the site and get a feel for it better than lot 6, which is just a lot of bushwhacking to get off the street. That's all, just to be forewarned. It's harder to get a sense of lot 6. Other
So
than
if
it's
you want
easy
to
to see
go
that
during
it's
the
got-
day for lot 6, you know, if
Got
you're
the-
available during the day, you've got the scope.
Yeah.
You know, Casey has allowed us to go onto the property, lot 15. It's town property, lot 6. By all means, go up there during the day, and then we can just talk about it, meet up there on the 5th, on the 11th at 5, if we want.
And you'll notice when you go up to lot 6, there are markings on the pavement, white arrows that have been spray painted with the letters JTC. That's the name of the company that did the borings, John Turner Consulting. There's 2 of them, so that between those 2 white markings is the width of lot 6. That'll give you some idea. You can see it right on the edge of the pavement.
Oh, it's gonna keep it.
All right, so I'll notify the other members that were here who got notices. And the other thing I would like is phone numbers. Tom, I need your phone number.
Gladly.
You're gonna write it down on that anyway, right?
I'm going to write it down on this anyway.
And if you have email, that would be great.
You have my email.
Yes. You're the one I gotta get on email.
That's on the
All right,
All right.
that being said, I'll make a motion to adjourn. He's acting pro tem. We're gonna pick.
Right.
It's Tom, right?
Yeah. Hi, Kevin. Glad to meet you. You go. Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I was talking to Tim. We're going to go right home.
You can make it, you can make it. Hey, Pat.
If I could.
5 o'clock, we're gonna meet at lot 15.
Is that the corner?
Yep. Corner lot.
The 6 is Riverside Disney Park. Lot we own.
Let me just see, you missed that.
Well, you'll be seeing me a bit.
So are we meeting at lot 15 or at lot 6? Do you recall?
I wrote it down. I wrote it.
We didn't say.
We didn't say. I'll be down at lot 6 tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to walk it. And, go.
I'm concerned, President.
That's no biggie. Hi, Jane. How are you?
Good job, how are you?
I'm all right for an old guy.
Have the onus of being an elected guy, but
Yeah.
How's that cup?
Absolutely, positively wonderful.
God, it feels kind of good to be sitting in this chair.
Good.
Do you want?
Of the zoning board?
No, budget committee.
Budget committee.
All right. Give me a chance to get up.
Come on, you old man.
I know. I brought the dog into so Cindy could see it the other day. And they fed it all the treats.
No, I don't blame my name.
You need help handing that stuff out?
There's enough of it. I'll give you that. Tomorrow. No, I won't say, but thank you. You're such a gentleman.
You can have that.
No, but I will.
Remind me tomorrow, I gotta tell him, he comes to meeting, so. He said he wanted to be on.
All right, you're gonna call the alternate?
And I'm gonna call the alternate.
Okay,
I need a bigger.
You don't have any women, I think that's sexist.
You got Pat and me.
He saw the emails.
And then these meetings are open to the public. It's not like they wouldn't be happy to hear from anybody. Hi there. But I was thinking about you the other day. Oh, oh, yeah, I missed my deadline. October 1st is the deadline. Oh, the 5th, oh, so I still have a few days?
Yeah, and I think it's
John.
18 on Monday.
so I could go to bed.
Yeah, this happened to me last year, and the penalty really wasn't that bad. I thought it was gonna be more.
Oh, yeah, no, and it depends on, right, how much you owe, what percentage of it.
I have, yes, on the 17th, right? Yeah.
I just.
Joanne, you got a second one for,
Nice to see you. Yeah, so we should get together.
oh,
But you're always
10:15's
working.
over, I'll come in.
All right, yeah, we'll go,
Yeah, that'd be good. I'll do that.
all right. See y'all.
Bye.
I'll give it to John. Mine downstairs.
And next week we have Red Cross.
There's,
I read it just before I came, but, okay. Thank you. All right, so it is now 10 after 7, so I'm gonna call the Budget Committee meeting to order.
You got it on?
Okay. Just a minute while we get everything turned on. I'm gonna call the Budget
John,
Committee.
is red off or red? Joe, red is on.
Red is on, green is off. It
All
says
right.
so right on the side of the can.
Thank everybody for being patient. There was a meeting of the new police department committee beforehand, so that's why we're delayed a little. Thank everybody for being here on time. Good to have you back with us, Wayne. And we now have Joe Jesmond on board. He's representing the Lockmere Water District. If you will recall, we found out that they're supposed to have a meeting, a member on our committee, and Joe is that member. He's one of the commissioners. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
You're here at a time we get very, very busy. Steve will not be here today. He's got a doctor's appointment. So the first order of business is the minute meetings from August 16th. Does everybody have a copy? Want to take a look at those? Any comments, corrections?
I make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes as written for August 16th, 2017.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
In reading the minutes, and I was not present, in reading the minutes, when you talk about Mr. Brock, are we talking about... No, I think I've answered my own question. So we're talking about Wayne, right?
I don't know where you're referring to.
On any of them, the bottom of page 1, Mr. Brock questioned the durability of the truck, and then Mr. Brock questioned the impact on the budget.
Yes, that would be Mr. Wayne Brock.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
It says Mr. Scanlon over there, so
Yeah.
they're listed on the top.
I was gonna say Mr. Brock wasn't present, so Mr. Brock Mitchell. So it would be Mr. Mitchell anyway. Right? Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
2 abstentions. Okay. So we're going to start next week, this coming week, with the outside agencies coming in. So everybody got the packet. Next week, we're gonna have the Red Cross, New Beginnings, and the New Hampshire Association for the Blind. Have all of those responded, Johanna?
New Hampshire Association for the Blind has not.
They have a new director. I don't know whether you got that information. I believe it's Gene Martin. It's a man. It's Eugene Martin. And I would assume he has the same number as Shelley had. So would you please give them a call and make sure that they did receive the information? And thank you very much. Because of the change, I don't know whether it got sifted to the proper place or not. 'Cause it's not like them not to respond, I don't believe, is it? Have you gotten a response from the Red Cross at all? Okay.
So that was New Beginnings, American Red Cross, and...
New Hampshire Association for the Blind. Okay? So I think, Arthur, you weren't here last year when they came in. So make sure you review all the financials and everything and be ready with any questions that we may have. I know the one that generates the most questions is usually the Red Cross. And last year, it made a difference in what we gave, and we've never given them, I don't think, what they requested anyway. In many years, they don't even pick it up.
Yeah.
So what are the 3 again, Jay?
The Red Cross,
Yeah.
New Beginnings, and New Hampshire Association for the Blind. And there's been a name change for New Hampshire Association for the Blind. And I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I'll call tomorrow and let you know, Johanna, because I have it somewhere at home.
I don't seem to have financials from them either.
No, I don't think
In the past, the last year, wasn't it decided, I may be wrong on this, for the island concert to come in? Are you considering them, you waived some abilities, some outside agencies not to come in? Were they one of them?
I don't,
I can't remember.
we waived, actually, we don't even have anymore listed the cemetery or Birchhill Kennels
Their contract, yeah.
because they're contract.
Trees, Jenny.
However, the concert series is not a contract. And I believe we had Chris Meinholz came in last year.
missing the financials, I'm missing the financials for the blind.
I think that you haven't received any, is that correct?
Yeah, not
She hasn't
received
heard
any.
anything from them at all. But it's like I said, they had some changes. They had a change in the person who's in charge of public relations, and they had a name change. So I don't know, they're still at the same location, and it would be the same phone number. But I'll get that information to you. As I say, I do know that it's Eugene Martin took Shelby's place, I believe. Shelley's place. And their number would be the same, and their location is the same. But there is a new name. And at the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at the last financial report that we got? Anybody got any comments or questions? Wayne, you won't. Yeah, I think everything looked pretty good. I didn't. Is anybody gonna have a problem at all with coming in every week? Arthur, do you have any conflicts with, but not Wednesday? Because all of our meetings will be on Wednesday unless we notify otherwise. I guess the other thing we need to talk about is Thanksgiving week. Traditionally, we don't meet that week. How does the budget committee feel about that?
Not me that week.
Mm-hmm.
Works for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
All right, so Johanna, we won't meet the week of Thanksgiving. Primarily because Joe and Arthur have to be cooking the turkeys. All right, are there any comments on the financials? Seem to be pretty much on target. I think the week before we the month before we discussed the issues that we had questions on. And Pat's representing the selectmen, so Pat, do you have any new information to give us?
Cool. Anything?
Anything?
I wasn't really prepared, so let me just dab into this. We have, well, the new equipment, we did have the windfall that from the, I think they call it SB 38 monies from the transportation, the state of New Hampshire. We got 54,000 and some change from there. We thought we could use that for sidewalks, to do some extra sidewalks or whatever, but there was an error in calculating financing the trucks at the public highway department, and we needed to change the financing because we couldn't do a financing the way it was done, and therefore we needed to use the money to do the financing, pay for it. So we took monies out of the 54,000 out of that, and we took some out of the equipment fund, and I believe there was about 7,000 that was taken out of the general fund.
For financing the truck?
Right. We couldn't do it the way that it initially, there was an error in the way that it was initially done. We can't indebt the town in an unsecured loan. Therefore, it couldn't have been done the way it was done. It was an error. So we had to redo the loan. It's not a loan. We had to pay for it out of the monies. We had only one option: pay for it out of the monies and the SB 38 monies, which was 54,000. I had my paper in front of me, I could tell you exactly how much we took out of each account. But I could get that account for you from Tim, and then he can explain it, and we'll send it out to Johanna, and she can send it out to everybody. It was very specific. We took the SB 38 money, which was 54,000 and some change, and then we took some money out of the equipment fund, and then there was some out of the general fund. I believe it was out of wages, out of the general fund. And that made up the money of the total package that you folks talked about in the minutes the prior week. The other thing, police dispatch. We expanded the police dispatch to 16 hours instead of 8-hour shift. The need is very great. It was for safety reasons. There was a number of, I would suggest for everyone to look at the selectmen's minutes the last month or so, or the tapes. It was for a couple of reasons. Safety was the big issue. Number one, there's officers in data entry. We're paying an officer right now a good substantial amount of money. And when they're dispatched out of Belknap, they're dispatched on a call. The call comes into their computer in the cruiser. It doesn't download the information, so they have to go back into the station and retype all the information again. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 hours in the evening. If you're on 10, 15 calls a night, that's what you're doing. When I became a selectman 9 years ago, that was one of the biggest complaints, was the double data entry. If they do the data, and if they're dispatched from the PD in Tilton PD, they don't have that issue. It's downloaded. Terry inputs the information. It's downloaded in because their system is a terminal server and whatever the software. There is potential software out there that's coming out that may be out at the end of 2019. It may or may not be in the vicinity of $10,000 or better. It's a prototype right now, and it's CAD to CAD. They're testing it somewhere out in Iowa right now. The other issue is that Tilton is so busy that there are some times that they cannot get the airtime to dispatch and let them get the call and let them take care of the issue. Or dispatch can't get back to them because of the airtime. Everybody's vying for the airtime on a Belknap dispatch. And also, Belknap takes only what needs a very short synopsis of what needs to have happen. And they're missing a lot of that, so they have to chase that information down. We expanded it to 16 hours, which meant hiring 2 full-time dispatchers, which will overlap, and they will, the 3 dispatches will have 8-hour shifts and an overlap in there to cover the 7 days. There's going to be one day where there's a 4-hour shift that will be for catching up on the files, prosecution files, and so on and so forth. And that's going to be in that little time frame. And I'm sorry I wasn't better prepared because I didn't really know I was staying for the budget committee, but if I'm missing something, be sure to ask me, and I'll be...
The cost? What is this cost? What is this program going to cost the town?
Let me see if I have it, Joe.
While perhaps looking for that, I would suggest that you listen very carefully to the selectmen meeting for those last 2 meetings, to get an understanding of why the need is necessary. The police department was here, giving information on it.
It's in my folder, Joe.
And initially, it was suggested that they add, I believe, 2 full-time. Anyway, how many hours was it initially, the first recommendation?
We were initially looking, they had asked for 16 hours, and then when we were really seriously looking at a 24/7 dispatch because there are 2 other towns that would buy into our services.
Okay, so that's why I think it's important to listen to the testimony that was given by the police department in the final.
It didn't
compromise that.
Right, it didn't
resulted.
seem really cost effective for looking at it at that point in time, once we get established as 16, the 16 hours. Northfield and Samberton were going to come in on us if we went to 24/7. So there would have been a cost sharing, if you would, on that end of it. But the amount of cost that it would have cost the town of Tilton really wasn't feasible for us to make that decision and go after a new police station, which we so desperately need. So we settled on looking at just the 16-hour for now, even though Northfield and Samberton won't come on board with us because they have to make a decision to Belknap. They need to be covered 24/7, so they're going to make a decision to stay with Belknap for now, which I would do. So we're on the state police tower, so we have that air of capability. Not all PDs have that. We do. We were lucky enough a few years back to get on. Do you remember how long ago? It was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That we were able to get on that tower, and we were the last one that was able to get onto the tower. So we have that capability now. So they will be a rotating shift, according to the contract. They will be $18.50 an hour, according to the contract, entry level, which is a lot better than paying a $30 an hour officer for double data entry.
How often does that happen?
Every night.
How many hours does that happen?
Every night. We have, from 4 o'clock on, every one of those officers have to re-enter their information into the computer. Every single one of them.
That's ludicrous. Why don't they just take the thumb drive and plug it into the other computer?
It's not compatible. It's IMC and another program it's not compatible with each other. And I personally spoke with Mark Baranowski, who's the contact person for IMC, and said, why doesn't this work? And it doesn't, because it needs to be a CAD to CAD kind of program. And that's the one that they're trying to develop now, which may or may not be out. That last year, Belknap County wanted to charge us for dispatch, and that got pulled back temporarily, and they put a freeze on hiring dispatchers, and dispatchers weren't getting the hours that they wanted either. But they said they won't be asking, I don't want to phrase this the right way, they will not be billing the towns individually yet. They will give us at least a year before we start to get billed for that. But eventually, it is going to come down the pike that we will all be getting billed by the county for our services. And Tilton is the second highest, the second busiest town that they serve. So you can imagine what the bill would be.
2 questions.
In the 40s.
2 questions. One of the questions I have is, the cost of this is coming out of the police budget, out of their funding, or is it going to have to be absorbed by other line items within the budget itself to pay for it?
From November to January, it will be absorbed with funds within the budgets. And then from the new budget going forward, it's under dispatch. It will be under your line item under police, which will be salaries.
So there's gonna have to be transfers of funds that cover that cost. Because it's not in the police budget itself.
That's correct.
Now, you said this is a contract position. When is their contract due again? And what includes the...
3 years.
3 years from now?
Right.
Okay.
They just signed a contract in July, so July, 3 years it will be. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions on the dispatch position? Joe, did you?
I'll wait. I've got numerous questions, but I need more information before I ask.
I will send you the actual cost. Joanna, I'll write it down. I'll send you the actual cost of the dispatch so you can forward it to everyone on the budget for dispatch, the actual cost. Printout.
In the county budget, they don't currently break out dispatch, do they? There's not a line item
They do,
that
actually.
we have to pay a certain percentage
No,
of.
they, it's in our taxes now. They don't.
There you go.
Right,
We can figure out.
right. We could backtrack it, yeah.
'Cause we're gonna
What
pay
was the
that
other
out
thing that I
anyway.
was, said I would send you? What was the other thing I said I was gonna send you? Oh, the breakdown of the.
Breakdown for the
Of where the monies came,
yeah,
where the monies,
yeah. And while we're on that, I want to go back to that and ask a question. Where does that leave us in terms of the plan for replacing sidewalks?
the same, it would have added, the $54,000 would have been an extra bonus, and we would have gotten a little bit more done than we planned. The plan is still to continue with
the
sidewalks
plan,
and have monies put into the revolving for sidewalks and roads. And then this year we have, in the warrant article, will be specific about what sidewalks are going to be done and how much that's going to cost. So that part hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
At all. We would have gotten a little bit more mileage out of an extra 54,000. So, but it wasn't really decided on. That was the direction we were going to go in, but it wasn't really formally decided on that that's where we were going to take the money out. Now we can. So the board really didn't get a chance to do that before that option came.
And DOT gave us a grant for what reason? I heard you
Well,
say the name of it.
it was they gave it to all the towns. It was really the monies for
This is
the gas
regular
tax.
grant we get
Yeah,
every year?
no, it
This
was
is
extra.
separate.
This is extra money. It's extra money. So it was 54,000 for the town of Tilton.
Sweet.
It was 70-something for Northfield. It was extra
My
money.
memory's old.
And you had to use it in a specific way. It had to be a new project, new equipment. It had to be something that was going to be different, not something that you already had started. And you used the money to
And
start it.
one of the
Absolutely.
things that had been entertained was something, I know with John had talked about doing something with the island and that it couldn't be used for that.
Yeah. Back to that warrant article that was passed last meeting. I believe it was, and I may be wrong, and I need no problems being corrected, but we put money in that warrant article for sidewalks only, not to be used for anything else other than sidewalks.
Yeah.
So that money was used just for the sidewalks.
That's correct. We did from in front of the town hall, the side of the town hall up to the bridge on the opposite side of School Street, and then all the way down to
So
Cumbies.
this money was on top of what was actually allocated
That's correct.
as a warrant article,
Right.
Yeah.
just to make people clear.
That's correct. Yep. We did what we didn't do the year before. It got done.
Right.
And we were able to come in a little, the contractor came in a little bit lower, and we were able to get a little bit more done with that money.
apples and oranges, but we need to be aware. The school board has announced its limits for the budget for next year. They're looking for a ceiling of 1.5% increase. So we're going to have to vie for those funds. They're also going to take a look at the contracts for math teachers, science teachers, technology people, because they couldn't hire any this time around. In fact, classes actually were delayed almost a week because they couldn't offer them any. So we're going to be vying for that pool of money.
We've asked the department heads to come up with a level budget, with the exception of the added dispatch for the police. Because we made that decision, they didn't.
Be sure to keep your eyes on what's going on at the county level also, because, you know, there are real questions about the dispatch, and I know a lot of citizens have questioned it, but I frankly have problems buying what we're told by the county, because that delegation can be very erratic and very conservative and very quick to turn around and place things that can be placed in some other direction in that direction. So even though we are assured that that's not going to happen this year, be sure you watch for articles that are in the paper on what's going on at the county level. It's a real concern, I think, for each town. That's my own personal opinion about it. And again, I suggest that you listen to the selectmen meeting. The last 3 meetings, I believe, will cover those discussions about dispatch, the pros and cons, and the comments that were made, and the compromises that took place in order to come up with what they've come up with now. And safety was a big issue in it, a real big issue in listening to the officers who testified. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, anybody have anything else, any new business, any comments? Again, be sure to review these notes, and Johanna, I'll get that information to you tomorrow on the old Association for the Blind, whatever the new is, if we can contact them and give them a call about financials, tell them we need that information. Okay?
And there's no more other business, I make a motion to adjourn.
You guy will second it?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm going home, watch the baseball game.
Thank you, Pat, for taking the last minute. John apologizes for not being here, but he has a new job. We're very happy for
Another
him.
new job?
Yeah, he works for me.
Oh, well, no, I already knew about that. You said a new job.
No, but it's new. It's new since our last budget committee meeting.
Oh, well, there you go.
We're just glad he has a job and he's closer to home.
He likes it. It's a good thing.
Can you get the camera? Joe.
And I do watch the committee meeting.
I thank you. Bye, Wayne. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
159.
I can't believe.
Maybe Arthur will be surprised. Is that?